The thing that Donald Trump cites as the reason essentially for his, what he himself calls flexibility, what everyone else would call a U-turn, is the bond market.
In the UK, we had our Liz Truss moment in the autumn of 2022. That's supposed to happen to small economies like ours, not to big economies like America. The guys who were around Donald Trump, the ones who are the big tariff backers, they were suddenly on the back foot because this wasn't working. And the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, suddenly he is saying to Donald Trump, look, the bond market is turning against us. This is a huge crisis. This could get worse and worse. We may not be able to sell our bonds. It's like a Liz Truss moment, but on a massively bigger scale because America is so much bigger. And within half an hour of the Wednesday auction finishing, Donald Trump had issued his tweet saying he's doing a 90-day moratorium. This was the reassertion of the Treasury against the White House, of the bond market against an American president. This wasn't a U-turn Donald Trump chose. It was a U-turn which global capital markets forced upon him. And things aren't going to be the same in the future. Nobody knows where this will go. This weird idea the Americans have had, the Trumpians have had, that somehow America being the reserve currency, the currency everybody trades in, the debt we all buy, that somehow this is a burden of America. The truth is it's been a great bonus for America because it's meant they've been able to sell their debt at much cheaper prices. Suddenly that's in doubt. Is America now a reliable reserve currency? If you see, for example, debt being issued by Germany or Canada, Australia, Britain, others, is that going to become a more attractive source of stable savings if you want to diversify your portfolio? I mean, is the era of American hegemony, I mean, I'm not saying it's over, but it's in doubt in a way that hasn't happened since the Second World War.
Yeah, well, certainly America is tearing at the system it created. The capital markets, as we understand it, were developed by the United States, and they are pulling at the institutions and the foundations of the system that they helped create. And some would say that, and the Trump supporters, I think, would have said, this is, we've been ripped off. We've been running this system on behalf of everyone else. Everyone's free riding on us. That's got to end. Or you might say what enormous power the United States has by being not only created these institutions, but the dominant player in them. And that's certainly, I think, the view that you and I would share. And I think it's worth, therefore, just pausing to say there's been quite a lot of relief, certainly if you're an international investor and you've got stocks and shares, at least at the moment that this podcast goes out, that Trump pulled back and did his U-turn. But we're still left with a situation which would have seemed extraordinary 4 or 5 months ago, which is 10% tariffs across the board from the United States on all of its imports from all around the world, 25% on all imports of cars, of aluminium and steel, including from the United Kingdom, and a trade war with China because at the same time as U-turning on the general tariffs he was imposing on all other countries, he actually yanked up the tariffs on China, and China had responded to the previous increase in tariffs. So you've got a trade war between the two largest economies.
It might be that in the face of that trade war, China diverts a lot of its exports, which would have gone to America, into Europe, floods Europe with cheap Chinese exports. We end up with a trade war between Europe and China over this kind of dumping, as it's called, of cheap goods into Europe. That's clearly what some of those Trump trade guys think is going to happen. Although, is China and Europe going to be that stupid as to allow that to happen? I mean, is this the end of globalization, or is America withdrawing from a global trading system which needs to run on decent rules? You end up with the amazing sight of the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs sending out propaganda videos of pictures of, Donald Trump and immigrants and domestic violence in America and him threatening Greenland with a backdrop of John Lennon singing Imagine, while China says, we need a world order based upon solidarity and respect and values and harmony. I mean, the idea that China, it's so ostentatious, should be trying to take advantage of this moment. But it shows, they're not passive players in this. They are active, and who knows how active they've been in recent days. But, this is the world order in tumult.
And of course, it should be said that all of this creates enormous uncertainty. The fact, of course, that this reprieve on the general tariff policy only applies for 90 days, as you said earlier, means if you're sitting in a company boardroom anywhere in the world, how can you make a decision on investment right now? And that's bad for all the economies.